This is Garis, Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 586, entitled Masculist Arguments to Convert My Ex-Girlfriend from Being a Monoconscious to a Biconscious Feminist. Description. This flyer contains a copy of 2 emails I sent to my ex-girlfriend trying to persuade her to become a biconscious feminist instead of remaining a monoconscious feminist. Increasingly, monoconscious feminists in their millions will be dumped by their biconscious boyfriends in disgust for women's callousness towards the suffering of men at the hands of the massive gender crimes that women commit against men. This flyer presents the masculist case in a rather compact form that may be useful. Now the flyer itself. Masculist arguments to convert my ex-girlfriend from being a monoconscious to a biconscious feminist, by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. The paragraphs below are taken from 2 emails that I sent to my ex-girlfriend, trying to explain to her the essence of masculist ideas in fairly compact form. She is at the moment a real monoconscious feminist who gives the impression either of being almost totally ignorant of how women oppress men, or if she does know some masculist manosphere ideas, then she gives the impression of being callous towards the suffering of men at the hands of the massive gender crimes that women commit against men, making her look as though she has no empathy for men's lib. There's a strong evolutionary psychological argument that says that women evolved in the distant past to be able to quickly, coldly, callously, disloyally dump a man overnight if, for whatever reason, he lost his ability, in brackets, for example through injury or sickness, of being able to provide his woman and their kids with his male hunted meat, since her survival and that of their kids depended on her being able to do this, that is, give access to her cunt to a more sexploitable man who could give her and her babies male hunted meat. She needed to be able to quickly dump a man because her very survival depended on it. This is a very persuasive argument. So if it turns out, after a lot of masculist persuasion on my part towards my ex-girlfriend, that she remains callous towards masculist arguments, then I will be so pissed off, feeling so bitter that she is so cold and so unempathetic towards men's suffering under women's massive gender crimes, that I will cut even friendly contact with her, totally cutting with her, feeling a sense of injustice and anger, even hatred towards her for not seeing what women do to men, for her not empathizing with men, for not being a female masculist. I'm predicting that over the next decade, millions of monoconscious feminists are going to be dumped by their boyfriends, as their boyfriends, who are currently monoconscious male feminists, become influenced by masculist and MGTOW ideas and become biconscious. Their new biconsciousness will cause them to see the monoconsciousness of their feminist girlfriends as bigoted, callous, unjust and hateable, and they will dump them in disgust. When millions of men do this to their monoconscious girlfriends, this will cause a shockwave across the feminist movement, as millions of feminist women go through a lot of pain, wondering why suddenly so many millions of their boyfriends are now their ex-boyfriends, and why these ex-boyfriends are now having relationships with bi-conscious feminists, preferring them to monoconscious feminists. This mass monoconscious feminist rethink will force them to study masculist and MGTOW ideas. Otherwise, they will continue to rot on the shelf, and in time, both sexes will consider them to be gender political retards, fossils, and stupid. Judging by the growing number of women on the internet who are now showing an understanding of masculist and MGTOW views, it's clear that women will divide into two camps. Re the manosphere, that is, those who understand the ideas pushed by the manosphere and those who don't. Men will obviously prefer to have relationships with women who understand men, and those women who don't understand men will be left in the cold until they see the light and make the effort to understand men as well, or continue to rot on the shelf, punished by men by being totally ignored, dying a slow, miserable death, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and spat at. Here is a copy of the emails I sent my ex-girlfriend, trying to convert her to becoming a bi-conscious feminist. If it works for her, then maybe it might work for other monoconscious feminists who happen to be reading/watching this. Here it is. I have removed specific names to maintain anonymity. Dear X, re your attitude to masculism. My suggestion here is that if you become more convinced that there's something to masculism, then your antagonism towards men's lib will soften, and as a result, the ideological barrier between us should lessen, so our tentative in brackets connection can be freed from this barrier. I expect you to be as much female masculist as you expect me to be male feminist, that is, accepting the main ideas of each ism based on, in capital letters, humanitarian grounds. As a male feminist, I accept, of course, that women should have equal rights, equal pay, equal opportunities, etc. Similarly, I expect you to be female masculists for things like equal rights imply equal obligations. Men gave women the pill, a life expectancy of 85 years and a career window of half a century. So women have a powerful moral obligation to FIP up. In brackets, FIP equals financially independent person. You are like millions of other feminists in that you have been taught by feminism's 6 decades monopoly over gender politics that gender oppression is a one-way street, that men are the oppressors and women are the oppressed. Masculists know better, who are mostly bi-conscious, that is, have had both their feminist and their masculist consciousnesses raised, so are aware that gender oppression is very much a two-way street. To become convinced of this, consider the big 3 ways that women oppress men that are horrific and last decades, so that from a masculist point of view, women actually oppress men worse than vice versa. But society, the media, pushes the idea that men are toxic because men are the oppressors. Here are the big 3. I suggest put yourself into the shoes of a man and ask yourself how you would feel if you were the victim of such a major gender crime by a woman against you as a man. The big 3 are manslavery, divorce rape, and forced fathering. Of course, there are many others. Manslavery. As stated above, women now have, thanks to men, a life expectancy of 85 years and a career window of half a century, so have a powerful moral obligation to FIP up and pull their financial weight, and not expect to be a fluffie, in brackets, fluffie equals traditional woman who expects to live off the money and labour of a man for decades of his life, thus man-slaving him, close brackets. Women FIP up by bothering to get career-competent educations at high school and college so that they become FIPs as adults and not manslave a man for decades of his life. The manosphere, especially Aaron Clarey, the curse of the high IQ guy, estimates that about 80% of young women choose to become fluffy crappers, studying fluffy crap majors at high school, and expect at the back of their minds that they'll be able to get their financial claws into some gullible, manslavable man just by wiggling her twat at him. Masculists see manslavery as 1,000 times bigger problem than was Negro slavery, given the numbers. Masculists have a hatred of manslaving fluffies, since masculists are abolitionists. Masculists spit on fluffies and ignore them to death. Negro slavery was so hated that it was the root cause of the US Civil War. Masculists point at young women saying, quote, "Now that you women can work, you must work. Anything else will get you hated for being manslavers." This is the end of part 1.